seeking guidance, inspiration, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. Get ready to be challenged, inspired, and transformed. And now, to guide you through this journey of discovery, please welcome your host, a visionary leader and a true catalyst for change, Dwayne Dwyer, but we affectionately know him as the Mindset Coach.
Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of the Hearts of Men podcast. We're your host for this evening's conversation. My name is Dwayne Dwyer, go by the Mindset Coach, and I'm joined by my brothers up top with me. You have Mr. Garfield Martin, the Uncle Junior himself, also known as the Consistency Coach. Below him, we have Mr. Roland Walker, poor man's Dr. Phil, also known as Mr. Shift Happens. And up under me, you have Mr. Tawami Gaddy, also known as the son of Timothy. Better, but affectionately, we know him as the Available Man. Gentlemen, how are you doing on this beautiful Friday evening?
I'm doing good. Just, got to squint a little bit today looking at son of Timothy, but it's all good. No shade.
Definitely shade.
That's my guy. I want to pick with him, man. I miss him.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Work was fine this week, and I'm just ready for the weekend.
Did you say work?
That was shade. I just got to go.
Come on, Tommy. You ain't got no job.
I was about to say he threw shade at himself. It was a blessed week, man. I can't complain. Get to end it off with my brothers and spend time with my baby. So, hey, I'm here for it.
Is it me or does he look like Cat Williams' little cousin?
All he needed is the drink, huh?
Oh my goodness. Hey, listen, man, as always, it is an honor to share a conversation with you guys. I think I speak on your behalf when I say that it is also equally an honor to share a conversation with the most livest chat in social media. And so if you are here, by all means, get in the chats, regardless of whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. And just kind of, speak, say hello, whatever the case may be, because we like to acknowledge you by name on this platform. So that being said, Michelle Ray, Crystal Everett, NL, is good to see you and welcome to the show. Miss Lisa Keys, The Journey, Miss Verlene McCoy, aka Queen V, welcome to the show. Miss Teresa Austin, good to see you. Miss Bernadette Simmons, good to see you as well, and welcome to the show. Anyone else out there in the land, listen, if this is your first time joining us and you're on YouTube, look in the lower right hand corner of your screen, locate the YouTube symbol, put your cursor over top of that, and then go ahead and click the fly out the subscribe button. Don't forget to click the notification bell, but don't just click the bell, hit the drop down and select all. That way every time we go live on this channel. I think that is probably all of the public service announcements that I have. So unless you guys have anything else that we need to cover real quick, we can dive off into this conversation. That good? You ready to go? Okay, very well. Let's get it. Welcome back to the Hearts of Men podcast for part 2 of our profound discussion on the unspoken struggles of fatherhood in the diaspora. In our previous conversation, we discussed the historical context, cultural identity, and the impact of unconscious biases on Black fatherhood. Tonight, we continue this journey by diving deeper into silent struggles of emotional and mental health that many Black fathers face. We'll discuss the unique challenges and stigmas surrounding mental well-being, providing practical strategies for support and resilience. Our goal is to foster a deeper understanding and heightened awareness that can transform our approach to fatherhood. Join us as we uncover more stories, share more insights, and continue to challenge and inspire each other on this path. Let's dive in and make this conversation another step toward awareness, empowerment, and lasting change. As always, we look forward to everything that you guys have to say in the chat, every question that you have. So by all means, as you already know, fire away. So the last time we had this conversation, we started off by looking at the differences between, Mother's Day and Father's Day. But this week, I kind of want to start it differently. I want to ask you guys a question. And thank you. I appreciate that. I want to ask you guys a question. And I kind of want to get your feedback, your insights, so forth and so on. So I think we had a very good conversation last week. I want to get your opinion, your insight, and this also includes the people in the chat. Like, what is something from last week's conversation that resonates with you, whether you knew it prior to or not? I'm curious because I really want to get feedback about this particular topic.
I think one thing that resonated with me was when we talked about, we kind of just tiptoed around and barely touched about the mental instability that a man could have because of the things that he has on his plate that he says nothing about, and how the damaging effects of dealing with it can, build up to the point that where he wants to end his own life, or, just give up.
Um, for me, it was a reminder to be more self aware mentally, because even though we feel the struggle, we go through the struggle, but sometimes we don't stop to check on ourselves. Um, and that's one of the things, especially hearing the same perspective from all of my brothers, knowing that the struggle is universal to all of us brothers uh, that are fathers. So it's just something to be to be mindful of. Don't struggle in silence. Don't struggle alone. Check on yourself.
Man, I can't remember what went on last night. Much less last week. Man, honestly, man, I don't nothing honestly right now comes to mind. I know that once we get more into the topic, in the discussion today, I think that information is going to start coming to me from last week. So for right now, I'm on standby for this question.
My bad. I'm I'm in the same lane with Roland on this one right here because I think um, by the time he shared his point of view on that particular topic, he's seen, or everybody's seen that it was kind of like a like experience across the board. Everybody kind of experienced that, and so ironically enough, that's kind of like where I want to pick up with on this conversation. So first, I want to kind of give a real quick review of what we talked about last week. So first, we uncovered the no, you're good. First, we talked about the no, go back up to the historical context, please. First, we uncovered the historical context and its impact on modern fatherhood. Then, next, we talked about the unconscious biases and their effect on the perceptions of Black fatherhood. And then that took us to the silent struggles and the emotional and mental health. And so, the question that I want to kind of drop in you guys' lap as we start to unpack this is, what cultural stigmas around mental health might I have internalized? And how might these beliefs be affecting my willingness to seek help or support when needed? Now, as you look at this question, it could be back then when you felt the most pressure as a father, and some of the things that you reflected on, or even some of the conversations that you have with young fathers today.
I felt back then that it was a weakness. That if I were to go and receive some help that was much needed, and I knew I needed something, but the kind of help, like, man, Black people don't do that. We talk to each other, we get a bottle, we kick it with the fellas, but we don't go and talk to somebody laying on the couch about our problems. That's a sign of weakness and something I can't handle. And I'm a man, so I need to be able to handle everything. And if I say that I can't handle something, then I'm less than a man.
Um, I I concur right there. Especially as a young man and a young father, you know, I unlike most of my family members, I didn't have children in my late teens and early 20s. I had my first child at 25, right, my mid 20s. Um, until then, I was just I was just living. I was just figuring out this military thing, figuring out, you know, how to do me, how to take care of me, how to grow as an individual, and then becoming a father, and now all these things that I heard growing up that Roland alluded to, you know, I had to just tough it out. I had to stick in there. I had to just deal with it. Don't don't cry about it. You're a man. Everybody goes through it. You know, all this stuff, and then at the same time, y'all know me. I'm transparent. I don't really care about the messiness. And at the same time, I was being told I didn't have to. I need to stop trying to be involved in certain ways as a father because it was a it was the mother's job to know about the kids' health. It's the mother's job to care about the kids' education. It's the mother's job to do this. It's the mother's job. It's the mother's job. All I'm there for is to pay the bill and shut up. And it's like, well, that's not who I want to be as a father. And so all these things, I'm, I'm made to feel as if I'm less of a man to want to be a father, to want to be active, to want to know where my kids are, who's touching my kids, who's with my kids. And all I was supposed to do is just deal with it because every man goes through it.
I think the with the cultural stigmas, we can look at our personal lives and then we can look at our military lives. Personally, we were kind of taught, as everybody has said, to be self-reliant, which means that we have to take care of ourselves. No one is coming to save us, right? Then in the military, it's kind of similar the same way. As you get rank, there's less people to talk to about your problems. You don't talk to your subordinates about your issues, but when you get promoted and you're an E6 or you're an E7, and it's only one or two other E7s or seniors around you, there's not as many people to talk about. And then there's still that stigma to be self-reliant, because I am the one that people count on. I'm the platoon sergeant, I'm the squad leader, I'm the section sergeant, whatever it may be. Even on your jobs as bosses and managers and stuff like that, for the civilians that may be listening or watching this show, it's the same thing. So when we become self-reliant, a lot of times it we don't really want to go and talk to nobody. We're like, you know what? Because we feel like we got it. We can handle it. I got this. This is how it's always been. Men need to be strong. I got to hold this stuff in. I don't need to talk to nobody about it. And then it really does affect your willingness to want to go and get some help. And then not only that, especially in the military, especially old school military, there was a stigma behind it that, if you go to mental health, it's going to be in your records and it may affect your promotion down the road. So all of those things can really have an effect on everything that we've been talking about so far.
See, I like the fact that you went there because that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking the comparison between being a black father and a husband and being a soldier in the army. Because for me, I had a security clearance. And so having a security clearance, there are certain things that when you disclose it, it's like a red flag. And so you deal with things the best you can. But at the end of the day, dealing with things the best you can, as a soldier in the army, kind of concerned about what the status of your job would be if you disclose too much of a thing. And then on this side, looking like Roland said, looking like you're weak, no male in your family you don't think can relate because, sure, they may have went through some things, but it has not necessarily been an open door for you to have those conversations with them. So whether they're your in-laws, your outlaws, whatever that look like, it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, it is still a sign. You feel it's a sign of weakness. No one has ever modeled it, is what I'm getting at. So you have not seen men being vulnerable in the family structure, men talking about some of the concerns that they have as men when dealing with family life, when dealing with keeping the lights on, foods on the table, things of that nature, dealing with some of the issues that take place within the household, dealing with some of the dynamics and what it looks like. And like I said before, I'm the only guy in my entire squadron of my MOS at my pay grade. So I am one of one. So when I go missing, then that becomes an issue, especially when you're working at S3 shop. And so when you start hearing things where, like, little Jimmy's daddy is here for lunch with him every day. I'm not little Jimmy. No, I'm my little Jimmy's daddy. So it's like, who do you have those conversations with? I can't have it with little Jimmy's daddy because he's there every day. You see what I'm saying? So little Jimmy daddy can't even relate to my situation. So it's like a lot of these things tend to bear, and then you start having these self-talks with yourself because you try to rationalize things out in your own head. It becomes taxing. And I like the fact somebody mentioned about your soldiers. Like it's kind of like, what was it, an old secret commercial? Never let them see you sweat. So when you put on that uniform, you try to be the best version of yourself when you get the word, because you don't want your soldiers to see like there's a chink in the armor. They shouldn't see signs of weaknesses and things of that nature. So all of this goes to bear. Still showing up, still doing your job, still wanting to be the best version of yourself, giving your all to the people that you're in charge of, and then attempting to give your all, attempting to give your all for the people that you are responsible for when you make it home. So it is a heavy burden when it comes down to the stigma, because it's a fallacy. It doesn't exist. It's something we made up within our own cultural dynamics, simply because we didn't really do, and I'm talking from a male side of the house, right? We didn't necessarily do a whole lot of hospital visits and things of that nature. You didn't see a whole lot of men going to the doctor or whatever unless there was a significant issue. So when you start talking about these, you got physical health care and you got mental health care. Well, we never seen mental health care happening unless it happened in the church. And that's a whole nother conversation within itself. So any other points you guys want to add to that before we press forward? I'm laughing at me.
Not the church.
The church.
Church. Go ahead and talk to Pastor.
Pastor Johnson. So let me bring up that question. Bring up that question, please, because I think that's a great question. She asked, do you think that this is a problem in abuse? Is a problem in abuse in relationships? I believe she is asking, I'm a little confused here. Is
abusive relationships?
I'm thinking abusive relationships. And I think if that is the question, I would definitely say yes. But then I'm looking at another perspective of it as well, because when the thing that we don't understand, we abuse. So when you abuse relationships, it is definitely a systemic problem. But I mean, I'll leave it to you guys to answer how you see it.
Well, I'm glad you.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, I'm glad you said it the way you said it, because that's kind of how I was thinking when I read the question, which is, I don't think people see it as abuse in relationship because it has become our cultural norm for men to be seen in the light that we're seeing, to be treated in the light that. This is why, even in those conversations, right? All of us on here have agreed we can't stand those men versus women conversations. But a lot of those conversations stem from it's an evolution of the cultural norms we have created. Man comes home and gives his money to wife and go to sleep and go back to work. He's not really involved in family, So the abuse has become silent because we don't see it as abuse. We see it as weak men crying when they speak up. And so I don't think we as a society, not even as men, I think the thing I love about these conversations in this podcast, because we're uncovering manhood for ourselves as men completely, and for the I would say the world, but whoever's watching us to see, but for the world to see, because we don't truly understand this thing. We've put so much effort into understanding the child and the woman, and we have not put effort into understanding the man, so we don't even know if it's abuse or not. If that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense to me.
I think that anytime you allow the abused person to have the loudest voice in the room or a panel, then the abused person will make everyone that looks like her abuser fit that role. And that's why we have all these talking points. We have a lot of people speaking from the abused perspective and not the healed perspective. And when you get that, you get people that will just take sides because, hey, I can't really understand this side. I can understand this side better. And then there's bickering and fighting, and nobody's talking about solution-based issues. They're talking about problem-based issues. And it becomes a moot point because now it's just bickering and banter and who can be the loudest and who can. So it doesn't go anywhere. So when we talk about abusive relationships, which we all have had abusive relationships, whether it be physical, mental, or whatever it is. And sometimes we were the perpetrators in those aspects because we didn't necessarily know how to handle things. Like we talk about fathers and their jobs. You go to work and we got Sergeant Major and all them telling us what to do, and we get beat down at work. All these problems. Then we come home, and the only way we know how to manage is with a loud voice or with fear. So that's how we tend to regulate families, and that's not necessarily how that should go. But that's why these type of communications and various dialogues, so that you can see from the outside looking in what your actual problem is, and stop pointing to everything else as
I got that. And you know what? That's why I tried to offer two different perspectives when it came down to this question, hoping that we are answering the question as asked, because I wanted to introduce the side that says when you don't understand a thing, you abuse a thing, right? So, in essence, the very nature of relationship is abused by virtue of the lack of understanding of relationship. So, what ends up happening is that we do not necessarily exist in healthy relationship. We exist in a form of manipulation in one from one side or the other. And so, when it comes down to this, as you see here, when a person feels themselves slipping and don't necessarily know how to deal with it because it was never modeled, you got to realize that a lot of that stems from two reasons. Number one, you got the machismo side of it, to where I'm good, I'm tough, I got this, you know what I'm saying? Put a little Robitussin on it. Little boys don't cry. So when they grow up to be men, they be men that do not reveal things. They be men that are so, guarded and things of that nature. Well, here's the other side of it as well. Well, when you don't have daddy in the home, I don't necessarily have a good role model. So if dad ain't in the home, I don't even have a person to help me to understand what manhood looks like from their own experience, from their own perspective. So now you got this little boy that was raised up, little boys don't cry, stop crying, get up, so forth and so on. And now they become adults. And in essence, what they do is they try to push everything out that affects them, right? So they do not express themselves. They do not share emotions and things of that nature. And the big issue with mental health is that you have to be open, you have to be honest, you have to be expressive. Well, that contradicts everything that that young boy was taught. And now he's a man. That's the struggles that he is having in all of his relationships, not just one. So they may struggle with having a close-knit relationship with some of their children. They may struggle with having a close-knit relationship with their significant other, and they may struggle when they first go to mental health, if they go. And it may take them a few weeks before they start sharing and opening up and things of that nature. And I think just based upon this question, which I think is a phenomenal question, I think that's part of the issue. So for me, I look at it from the perspective of not understanding what relationship look like. Therefore, we just constantly go through different forms of abusive relationships. So you may have one, and you guys know it. You may have one where it's male dominance, I rule with an iron fist, right? But then you may have another where, happy, what is it? Happy wife, happy life. Wrong. You know what I'm saying? So that's another one. That is a form of manipulation. So again, both of them are wrong. So what does it look like? What does it look like for two people to come together and exist as one? And that's the struggle. That's the rub. And because most relationships do not model that, it is most relationships look like a form of manipulation. Therefore, now in that space, and let's just say one day this man wakes up and realizes that, man, I was married for 7 years, and I've been married for 7 years and didn't even realize I was being manipulated for 7 straight years. So when they wake up and they try to say, "Hey, can we sit down and talk about this? I want us to, kind of get on track on what this right here say." No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So now, again, going back to what Roland said, I go to work and I'm gonna use the other side of it, because let's just say you're actually good at what you do. So everybody at your job saying, "Man, you're phenomenal. You're awesome. You're kicking butt and taking names." And then you come home and you're struggling just trying to get people to clean their room. So yeah, the abuse is real. Go ahead, Uncle. Look like you ready to come off the ropes now. No.
No, I get everything you're saying. I'm just back here listening,
Yeah, man.
soaking it in.
Yeah. So no, I thought that was a great question, and thank you for that. And again, it's hard. It's difficult. It's not something that's easy, especially when they get to the point where they know they have to open up and express themselves. It took me, when I first did it, it took me like 8 weeks before I even opened up to my counselor. And the only reason I went is because everybody, Roland, you remember this, everybody had to go to be screened for PTSD. And when we got screened, it's like, okay, you, and y'all got to go see somebody else. And that's how I ended up going the first time. So great question, and thank you for that. Let's kind of move on to balancing traditional and modern parenting practices. This one ought to be very interesting. So the question, gentlemen, that I have for you is, in your observations and experiences, what are some concerns between traditional and modern parenting practices?
Well, first of all, I want to talk about some of the differences. I think when we look at some of the traditional, we looked at um, more of a strict, more of an iron fist, more of a do what I say do type relationship between the parents and the children. And then when we look at some of the modern parenting practices, I think we're looking at more of time out, let's sit down, let's have a conversation. Your thoughts and your feelings are important, different things like that. So I want to kind of start with that. If you guys got anything that you guys want to add to it, please do before I continue. If you guys want to, if y'all got anything.
Well, I want Dwayne to show the shirt. No, I'm just kidding.
I like the shirt.
No, I'm gonna come after you though.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Okay.
see where you go.
Yeah. All right. So I think some of the concern lines, especially when you have blended households, or you have where the parents and everybody's kind of connected and advice has been given on how to parent, right? So I'm a grandparent, so it's like if I'm telling my son, "Hey, look, this is how you should be doing things, rule with an iron fist, yada yada yada," and he like, "Well, hey, I want to talk to Haley, and I want her to have her opinion." And so now he's kind of confused, and he's trying to figure out, okay, so do I rule with this iron fist, this traditional way of doing things, or do I take this modern approach? So I think sometimes it can cause confusion. We all have to, as parents, we all kind of go through that, when we start becoming parents and trying to figure out how to parent and stuff like that. But I think, just some of the concerns is just with any parent, is just trying to figure out the balance and trying to figure out what works for you. So that's my response.
I think I grew up in a household that was the matriarch led. My great grandmother, she was the lead, and she made sure that the boys in the house, there were two of us at first, you did certain things. And this is my great grandmother, so she would tell the girls, the boys do the outside work. Y'all do the dishes, y'all clean the house, y'all do the clothes. But when I grew up having to know everything, so I knew when I got my own home, now I'm in the military, my way of transitioning, I didn't need anybody for anything. I didn't need you to wash my clothes. I don't need you to cook for me. So I did all those things. So the roles, I was never a role where girls only do this or men only do this, because it didn't fit well with how I was, because I was gone most of the time. And if I was only there to pay bills and be the authoritarian person, then I would eventually become obsolete. So I think that the modern practices of the whole time out and all that other stuff, I ain't with. But the communication portion, I am with. I'm with actually listening to kids articulate, because if you shut them down when they're young, they won't be able to speak up for themselves when they get older. So I allow, it's a certain way you're gonna talk to me. Now, I'm not your partner, so you're not just coming talking crazy to me, but you should be able to have dialogue with your children. Your children shouldn't be afraid to tell you things. I think that and that's just me now. Because before, like even to this day, my daughters with my grandchildren, if daddy said, that's law. But now it's like, okay, yeah, you got to listen to the kid. Now I'm passive because I ain't as stupid as I was when I was 20 something. So I think growth and maturity comes at different levels, and we can't shut things down simply because we disagree or don't understand.
I would say first I want to say I think traditional is different for everyone, right? Because as much as I like to say I grandfather myself into Generation X, but there's some things that y'all experienced that I didn't experience, right? The the whole '70s exist, I wasn't there. Um, and I'm not being petty. I'm really I love you. I love my brothers, but there's some things that may have taken place in the home that didn't take place, even though I think there's some still similarities. Every time I hear y'all talk, I hear the same thing. But like kind of like what Roland said, by the time we showed up, it was predominantly mother-led home, right? Um, and so there's a lot of things in parenting we saw and we didn't see, right? We heard and we didn't hear because you know the old saying, "Mama did the best she could do," you know, and and so now in modern parenting, you have two different things. You have the you have children parenting from their fears of going through what mama went through, or people parenting just based upon the lack of information or understanding because of the molding of the father was not present. And that's what I see nowadays. 'Cause when I hear a lot of parents, especially even the ones younger than me, when they speak about parenting, I think this whole emotional era of parenting comes into play because it's kind of like, well, I want to protect my child from this. I want to protect my child from this. It's like, and half of it, they tell me they never went through. So I'm like, who scorned you with their experiences, but as when I'm looking at the traditional modern, I think for us, for my generation, and those after me, we are parenting based off of the lack of traditional parenting. We don't know what it looks like for mommy and daddy to parent together, either mommy or daddy. We don't know what it looks like for for I hear older people say, how mama used to tell us wait till daddy get home. Well, we didn't have that. Mama did whatever she could do, and 9 times out of 10, when mama was out there hustling, trying to make ends meet, or whatever she was out there doing, because some mamas was just living their best lives in the '80s and '90s, we were panned off to somebody else, or we were, you know, go outside so mama could have a company, go in the room, stay out of grown folks' big business. You know, a lot of so we spent time raising ourselves. I have to, I say it like that. We was outside by ourselves. We ran the streets. We ran the city by ourselves. We came home when the sun went down. Or the street lights came on, depending on where you from. You know, so so as we parent now, we don't know. And I agree. I agree. I don't think some of these parents know though what it looks like to mold a child because a lot of us molded ourselves. We just got told to watch our mouth and mind our business when we got around the adults. And so for me, that's the concern. The concern is no one is listening to Papa Roland, and I say it like that for two reasons: to be petty, because he's Papa, Grandpa, and for the fact of he made those mistakes. He's learned and he's grown, and now he's Papa, he's Grandpa, and nobody's listening. We're trying to. Well, I could do it by myself. Nobody's listening to to Grandpa, Uncle Garfield. You know, we're dismissing the elders who have gone through some of the same absentees we've gone through, or some of the same struggles we've gone through, but are wiser enough to fix it, to mold us into the right, to steer us in the right direction. So that's my concern.
I like it. I like it all because I can see as I'm listening to you guys, I'm seeing everything. I'm literally seeing everything that you say, and have seen it. Um, I believe, and I'm gonna go back to what I know because I was raised under a very specific structure. There were certain things that were instilled in me growing up. And I think when I share these things, they may sound very similar when you reflect back over your experiences. So, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, sir, no, ma'am was a non option when it came to me. If you address an adult, you address them as yes, sir, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, sir, no, ma'am. That was without saying. Certain things being in the presence of a group of adults, that wasn't a kid's place. When I was outside playing, that was great, but I had to be within the house by a particular time. And that time was whatever time that street light came on. When that street light came on, you need to be in the house, right? So it's just little things like that. So I describe it as a very structured approach, like Adrian's message here. It was very structured. Now, I believe because that structure existed and some people didn't necessarily like it, what ended up happening is that they loosed the chain, they loosed all the chains of the structure. And so now you have kind of like an amoeba style of parenting. Um, and that amoeba style of parenting kind of lets that child do what they want to do. And as long as that child don't go too far, you kind of reel them back in. Okay. And so the structure isn't there, and I'm not speaking for everybody. It's just, again, observation. So the structure isn't there based upon what we understand. And I think for me, the concern is you got one group that says that our parenting style was the best. And then you got another group that says, well, y'all parenting style sucked. And this parenting style is the best. You know, we let children do what they want to do and we ask them what are the lessons learned. And I think for me, as I sit and think about it, is it possible that the merging of the two styles together is the best version for the children? Like, is it possible to have a structure that allows the child to speak their mind, express themselves within reason, right? Because, like Roland said, I ain't your friend, right? Like, I'm parent, not friend. So, a structure that allows them to speak their minds, share their experiences, and then you ask them questions within the situation so that they can learn how to think, not necessarily instructing them what to think. Just your thoughts.
Yeah, I definitely think that, that's possible. I think that some sort of balance altogether is what's best for the children anyway. And then I think that anybody who has children understand and knows that you can't necessarily parent every single child that you have the same way. I have three sons, and what may excuse me, what may work for one may not have worked for the other. The objective is to be the best parent, and that's for all of your children. So whereas again, whereas ruling with an iron fist may work great for the one child, but the middle child may be a little bit more different. So you may not be as effective in getting your point across, or being a good dad if you are ruling with an iron fist. He may require a kinder, gentler approach. So on the surface, I think that Coach is absolutely right. There needs to be some sort of balance between some sort of modern and some sort of tradition, whatever you want to call those two different things. So yeah. I did have another comment about the other stuff, but I'll get back to it. Oh, I'll go with the another concern I think is with the modern and the traditional is just the school system, right? So when you are raising kids and your kids have to go to school every day, the type of discipline that you can instill in your children at home is selective, because you know that the child has to go to school every day. So you may want to go out there and spank that child with a switch, but that those welts that's going to be on that kid's leg the next day is going to bring up red flags, and you may be getting a phone call from CPS. So something that simple, when it comes to the traditional of, kids getting whooping with switches and belts and stuff. And then now I'm coming in here now, and, we had it when we was little too, but now it's a lot more, it's really out there, and everybody, matter of fact, and everybody in the education system can be an anonymous reporter. So anybody can call on you.
I would say two things. One, anytime we look at the way things were done up to now and we frown upon it, we fail. Anytime we look at the way things have evolved and we frown upon it, I think we fail. Um, so I love the merging thing, because it's not just merge everything together, but it's a what worked for what purpose, and what was the goal and what came out of it. Because there were some things that I had to learn in the '90s that you ain't got to learn now. You know, not that learning is a bad thing, but there's some things that you dealt with in 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 in, in 1990. Oh, as a young soldier said to me, in the 1900s, uh, that you don't have to deal with in the 2000s. You know, because time has evolved, culture has evolved, communication has evolved, the way we do things have evolved. So but in the contrary, there are some other things that they need to learn that we didn't have to learn. You know, I don't remember growing up having to learn how to be careful of creeps on the internet. That was kind of like when I was like 18. I ain't had a computer. Uh, well, my daddy did have an old Mac that nobody could use but him. But even then, we didn't have internet. I didn't even know what that was. That was people in the suburbs had AOL. But but that wasn't a thing we had to be taught. So teaching something different because the times are different. I don't have to walk out. My kids don't walk out the house and have to deal with all the same threats we had to deal with. But even then, I think we were able to walk out the house and deal with less things than the kids have to deal with today. So I love the idea of immersion, but I think we gotta observe and learn why things worked, why things were the way they were. It's still in my house. There's still no option. Yes sir, no sir. Yes ma'am, no ma'am. You ain't got a choice. People say, oh, they got a right to, what right did they earn? They got the right to say yes ma'am, no ma'am. You didn't earn the right that this adult earned, champion through life to this point, to decide whether or not you want to give them enough respect to say yes ma'am, no ma'am. Because how I respect you, first of all, is not dependent upon your character; it's dependent upon mine. And that's the primary lesson I really give my kids. That's why we do it, But I think we have to be honest about the things that we do. So do my kids have more technology than I did? They do. But guess what? I get to put them on limits. If you want to play this game, you're gonna read this book. I remember there were days I was just looking at books. My daddy told me to read, and he beat us into the book, and I just sat there and looked at the book and cried in it and turned the page. I ain't read not one word, but I was in there for an hour with that book in my hand. But I tell them, read the book, come back and now talk to me. What did you read? What was it about? What did little Johnny do? You know, all right, yeah, you know what? Y'all earned your time on your tablet. Go ahead. You know, but it's structured, and I could take it away. That's the other thing. I think if they ain't got nothing, you ain't got nothing to take away. I can also take that thing away. So
I think since I was a parent in the 1900s, as Gaddy said, I think I was a I was an inner city kid, but raising suburban teenagers, suburban kids. And I would try to parent out of fear that they would come into contact with some of the things that I came in contact, but we were in totally different areas. We were situations and everything and mentalities. But since I was raising girls early, my boy came later. I was raising girls earlier. I raised them out of the fear that they would meet somebody that had the intentions like I had when I was growing up. So as a father, I tried to teach them certain things and tell them certain things to instill a fear of the opposite sex and sex and all that other stuff, instead of teaching them everything about it. And because I'm a firm believer, especially now, that everyone has to bump their own head. You got to fall. I got to allow you to fall. I can't just come and pick you. Oh, let me kiss your boo boo, especially if you're a young boy, because if I allow you to fall and I keep picking you up, you'll never know how to get up on your own. So when it comes to being a father and whether this is right, that's right, I think that there is a merge that needs to happen, and one way is not correct, because I'm not the corporal punishment is not a way that I want my kids, grandkids to receive that. Not the way, because we used to get beat on the back. That's when we thought we could get away with it. Oh, you hit me on the back. She still kept swinging. So ain't no go get your belt, go get your switch and all that. Certain things are needed for certain punishments. So if you do a punishment that type of behavior that's warranted, so be it. But you can't just beat the kid just because they ate some cereal at 10 o'clock at night, and you told them that. You can't just beat them, and because that's not teaching them anything. You got to teach them, for one, respect, as we were saying on here earlier, but you got to teach them boundaries. When you teach a kid boundaries, then they know that there's limits in life with everything that they do.
I like it. Real quick, everybody, wherever you are, real quick, I want you to hit the smash the like button. Go ahead and smash the like button, regardless of what platform you're on, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on LinkedIn or X. Go ahead and hit the like button real quick as we continue this conversation. So I'm hearing everybody say that we should merge the two styles together. My bad, man. What if you have, and I just want to kind of throw this out there as we continue, because I want to get to those questions that Michelle Ray has up here as well. But what if you have a parent who totally opposes your parenting style? Remember, we're talking the unspoken struggle of fatherhood. Where is it possible that mother and father have two different parenting styles? And how does that work? Like if I'm a young father and I want to raise my son or my daughter this particular way, but my spouse is wanting to do it a different type of way. She's totally against the way that I'm doing it. What are your thoughts in that?
Ooh. All right. So what we're saying is we are speaking that these people did not have the conversation before they got married, which, like most people, we don't have the conversation. At some point, y'all have to come to an understanding. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to. However that looks like, whichever road, whichever path you decide to go through to get there. But y'all do have to come to an understanding. If you want to take the biblical approach where the man is the head of the household and, you know, he gets the vision from God and you guys fall up under that, and, you know, you guys look to the word and that's how you guys want to do it, because that's what guides you, your set of principles, and that's how you do it. But at the end of the day, both people need to find some sort of level playing the ground where everybody is everybody don't necessarily have to agree, but they have to come to an understanding of exactly how things are going to be done at the end of the day. They have to. Or not.
I think this is a conversation that young couples should have before becoming young parents. One of the things that I wish that I've done before getting married was understand what I was seeing when meeting my ex-wife's family. Right, I was present, but I wasn't observant, and so I didn't really understand. I didn't realize that what was going on there, the things that I saw, and I did, even the things I didn't agree with, I just chucked it off as that ain't me, that ain't my house, that ain't my family, that ain't what it's talking about. But that's what she was raised up in, and that ended up being the things that I had to struggle with, and other things, of course. But I think we have to be observant of the past of the other parent, because that's going to play a part in how they raise their children, the way that they were brought up, and you have to understand how you were brought up and why you see things certain ways, so that this way we can have an honest conversation, honest dialogue. We can fully explain and articulate what it is we want from our children. Because for me, I try to ask this question. I don't get it right 90% of the time, but we still learn. That's why I had more kids, so I can learn again. I keep trying. I'm joking. um, but one of the things I try to always remind myself to ask the question is, what is the goal? I don't never want to parent off of my mama did, my daddy did, a child should, you better. Is what is the goal? When I teach my son how to fight, it's because the goal is I want him to learn how to defend himself, right? So I teach him how to fight. Why am I doing the thing that I'm doing? And so I think if we have these honest conversations, then we can come together and start realizing how we can parent together. Because I think we have to learn that child will have an identity of you and an identity of me if we parent together. Your way don't have to be against my way, but we have to learn how to support each other's way. Because even now, I don't agree with everything, my wife does as from time to time. But when she says something, when she does something, I support her in front of the children. Right? If we're gonna have a conversation, we'll have a conversation about it. But she gets my support, and all I ask is the same thing. I'm not gonna do it the way you do it, but when I do it, what I need is your support, so that we can do this together successfully. I don't think two separate people that grew up two separate ways in two separate places can 100% agree on parenting, and it can't be your way or no way.
I think that what worked at your mama's house and what worked at my mama's house, okay, I'm throwing both of them out the window. We have to do what's best for us. And when we're talking to these young kids, we're talking as if they are smart. No, they 20s and teens and 30s stupid. So they out here hunching and humping. That's what they doing. They ain't thinking about making no babies. They don't think about the baby until, she missed her cycle. So now I got a plan. I got to do this backwards planning thing. And then they learn on the job just like us. That's why they need mature people in their lives to help guide them So as they come with the stupid questions, as they come with the stupid fighting issues and problems, now we can say, hey, we can bring it down to where they can say, okay, man, I was dumb when I said that, when I thought that, because I thought I was supposed to just bang my fist on the table and she was supposed to do what I said and my food's supposed to be on the table and the kid's supposed to act all right. That's not how life happens. Life does not happen like that. Your kid's gonna do some ignorant stuff. Your wife gonna do some things that you don't like. Your husband, your spouse, whomever it is, you two are coming together, learning one another, and it's a process. And it doesn't happen over 5 days, a year, 2 years. It happens over time, because sometimes you don't like that person, but you should always love that person. You should always respect that person. You don't have to like their decisions. Like Gaddy said, if she comes in there and the kids say, well, mama said this. Exactly. We'll do what your mama told you. And after, you can say, hey, what was this about? You can talk to them, but all that arguing in front of, I don't tell my kids, like, women, they my kids too. They not just my kids when it's time to buy school shoes. But so that's my take on that.
Hey, I don't know. I don't know. I'm with Uncle on this one. We got to have the conversation early before we even get into the relationship. I need to understand what I'm getting into. Once we already got into a relationship and consummate, it's too late. And I got what you're saying. How we did it at my mama house and how you did it at their mama house, it goes out the door. But where do you think we learned it from? So I got to bring something from there. She got to bring something from there. And what we're doing is we're merging learnings as it pertains to raising a child. But at the end of the day, I believe that part of the decision metric, the decision metric is how you view raising children. If you view raising children totally different than I view raising children, then we ain't compatible. That's just how I see it. And if we are, then great, we can continue to move forward. And I think for me, it's not about perfection, because I think sometimes we believe that it has to be done a particular type of way. It's like, what are we striving for? What is the end goal? What is the so forth and so on, right? So when it comes down to it, you may do a thing a particular type of way. The way that you do it, I'm not necessarily married to, as long as the outcome is the same. If the outcome is the same, that's all I'm really concerned with. So I think a lot of times, and I'm saying that for a particular reason, because sometimes what ends up happening is that a person may be asking about your way of doing a thing, and you think just by them asking, you're assuming that they're trying to tell you that the way you're doing it is wrong. I do know that both sides exist, but again, for me, I have to say that the conversation must exist in the beginning. That's why in the beginning, doing relationship coaching, there's 16 different points that we talk about. That's one of them, right? What are your view on parenthood? Like, what I think it was Gaddy, you mentioned, looking at the parents and their relationships and things. That's a good indicator. It is a good indicator. Hey, I'm being transparent. It is a good indicator on where they learn their lessons from, right? Because if you go and look at a thing and every person in their family, every female in their family is single, not telling you to run, however, just telling you to be observant, right? And you don't judge a person based upon another person's lifestyle. I got it. Things happen. So that's why I say that's not okay, pull, pitch and run right now. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, again, if you see something, be observant of the trends, because the trends are taught. That's the lens that most people teach through. But again, when we have that parenting conversation in the beginning, we are talking to see how we can come together and, have what I tend to call collaborative parenting efforts. Collaborative parenting efforts is where we collaborate in the best interest of the child, not because I want to be the child's friend, or not because I want the child to view me as a better parent. No, I think it was Gaddy who said, I would never correct an adult in front of the child. If I don't agree with what's going on, sure, whatever is going on is going to happen, as long as you ain't trying to kill a child, right? I'm gonna let it happen, and then we'll go talk about it behind closed doors, because no one will get it perfect all the way through. But again, remember, the most important thing is the child. And if we're not having those conversations in the beginning, then we're surprised when the child comes forth, and then our parenting efforts they're not collaborative now, they're clashing. And that's a dangerous place to be in. Uncle, look, you about to say something else, so you just leaning in close.
I'm just leaning in close, listening.
Nope, no, you get you get. So let's kind of grab some of these questions on the side here because I want to make sure. Do you fellas believe that the Black culture upbringing changed to help remove angry Black parent stigma? I've never witnessed or heard of angry Black parent stigma. What do you guys think?
Yeah, me neither.
I think that a lot of us on the panel have moved away from our upbringing, because if you go back to where we're from, same thing that happened with our parents are happening with our siblings or whomever it is still in that area. They still think the same. They still move the same. I think that when you get around other people and you learn different things and you are able to grow outside of your box being your upbringing environment, then you can see things from a different perspective.
I agree right there because I do understand well, at least from my vantage point, where that stigma comes from, because I've only heard of that stigma in the hood, right? And I hate to say it like that, right? But poverty is a real thing, man. That's a real struggle, you know. And I can't speak to people who've never been in poverty, but man, yeah, there's one thing when we talk about kids. As a kid, I tell people all the time, man, I think I had more fun as a child growing up in the hood than my kids have here in the suburbs. I mean, sometimes we want to drop my kids off in the projects and leave them for a week or two, because they don't know how to play. They don't know how to have. I just, but for an adult, when you're trying to figure out how to feed said kid, when you're trying to figure out how to house them, how to clothe them, you worried about taking care of life, and so that angry parent. I'll be honest, most parents that I saw in the hood, by the time they got home to their kids, they were tired. Whatever they were doing, wherever they worked, they were tired. And tired and beat down. And especially growing up in New York, because wherever you worked at, you had to travel another hour or two on the bus or train to get back home, just to have your kids not do none of what you asked them to do. You know what I'm saying? So like that angry parenting, I understand it. So for me, I'm looking at culturally. I think what has changed for a lot of us is that we no longer live in that environment. I see like Roland said, my sister still parents the same way, the angry parenting, but she's still in the same condition. And I think when we can help the condition, help the culture, then I think a lot of that stuff will fade.
So yes or no? What do you got?
No.
No. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny. It's a yes or no question. So what you got? Yes or no? Roland said no.
No.
Okay. What you got?
I don't. I'm not familiar with the angry Black parent stigma. My my dad worked. My mom, for the most, didn't work. So that's kind of how we grew up. Old school, traditional, Pentecostal, apostolic church.
Episcopalian, hold my mule. Okay. Next question.
Hold my mule.
So is it fact that we create labels to categorize them by behavior? Example, middle children act certain ways. For me, I would say no. I think I think there is some truth to certain things based upon age, like the terrible twos, right? I don't think they're terrible. I just think they're extremely busy and got a lot of energy. But I think those categories exist, but I don't think when you look at the position in which a child was born, that kind of identify their behavior. So yeah, no, I wouldn't.
I would, because I got a bunch of them, and because my oldest.
Which one is the middle? No, I'm joking.
My oldest girl, she was the responsible one because she had to be. Because we didn't daycare. I got doggone 4 kids at the house. But then now the middle girl, she wasn't the oldest, but she wasn't the baby girl. So there was some times where she may have desired more attention and sought out more attention because the oldest is responsible. Hey, listen to your big sister. The youngest is the baby girl. She getting away with all the mess, and she's in the middle, kind of figuring her way out. But I think that those behaviors come for some sort of neglect that we perform or lack.
I think that we do. I think that some people do create labels to categorize, but I don't think it's the best thing to do. You know what I mean? I think anytime you're trying to group everybody into that group, I think it can cause problems because now when you say, okay, well, all middle kids act like this, well, now you're going to treat your kid based off of what people say the middle child is supposed to act. So now everything that you do with your middle child, you're looking through it from the lens of this is this is what is expected from the middle child. And then if it's something that's saying, okay, well, the middle child act like this, then now you accept it and say this what it is, and then you don't do anything about it. So I think that people do create labels and categorize it, but I think you can get in a lot of trouble when you do start doing that, especially when you start acting or treating people based off of that said behavior that children are supposed to act like.
Right. And that's kind of like my point. Even going back to the whole angry black parent thing, who is coming up with these labels and how many people are they using to gather the information to create these labels? We got to be careful of the stuff that we adopt because the stuff that we adopt and take it as the truth can cause, we just kind of carry it from person to person and things of that nature. So is it any such thing as an angry black parent, or is that person just dealing with, like using Adrian's definition here, is it just them dealing with the level of trauma in their parenting at the same time? So I think that's a lot of what happens. That doesn't make them an angry black parent. That makes them a person who have not resonated with their past experiences. Oh, by the way, they just happen to be a parent. So I'm not that one that adopts everything that people say. Like I'm that person these days. I fact checked everything. Just because this new terminology comes out, I'm not accepting it. And that's just kind of like my point. So
Man, Coach Stuck,
Coach Stuck froze for a minute.
he froze.
I
Let's
thought it was
see too.
No,
I thought it was me.
Let's
But I
see.
was automatic.
but what we're talking about, that's the same when it comes to the children. If you allow that, like, as you were saying, that could become an excuse for them for bad behavior. Oh,
Yep.
I'm the middle child, so I'm expected to act this way. And anytime you do that, like Coach is saying, now you take other people's thoughts and mind frames and put it on your children. Say, well, this is why you act like this. Same way people, well, you act like that because you're a Taurus. You act like that because
Oh man, don't even get me started on them horoscopes. I'm just like, and I get people believe in them, and I'm not dogging nobody out. My thing is that if you believe in horoscopes, then that means you believe that people are only created in 12 different ways, and that's it,
13.
based off of a month. So
But I think when we talk about those labels, though, it
kind of
identifies
small.
a problem if they're true, right? If the middle child syndrome or the baby syndrome or oldest child syndrome is true, then there's a problem that was identified. It means that we have learned how to treat our children differently, right? Like Roland talked about, his oldest daughter was more mature. Why? Because she had to be. She, you get what I'm saying? So she was treated more maturely, so she became more mature. The youngest, if he only had 3 daughters, the youngest daughter probably was getting more attention while the older daughter was doing more stuff because he had to pay more attention to that daughter. And then what happened to the middle child? Did we make that middle child feel forgotten? Is that why that middle child is acting out, or is this? You get what I'm saying? It that means the problem is on us as parents, not on the kids. If it's true.
Okay. Very well. Did we start to answer this question yet? I apologize for
Nope, not yet.
my brief interruption. AOL, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah. How do you, as a father, feel about one parent is doing their best and the other parent could care less?
Man, I think a lot of time when these things happen, I think there hasn't been some conversations that was had between the parents, and sometimes because when someone is saying what is their best and Owen could do more, a lot of times that's subjective. However, we also can know when somebody ain't pulling their weight. We also can understand and feel that in a relationship too. So I think that when this happens and when we recognize it, we got to have a conversation. Look, I'm going to work every day. You going to work every day. I'm coming home and I'm cooking. I'm doing all the cleaning. I'm taking everybody to the basketball games and the football games and the cheerleading and the gymnastics, and then doing, right? And you're not doing a whole lot over here. The conversation needs to be worded for that particular couple. The conversation needs to be had, because if someone is feeling that one parent is doing more and one parent is not pulling their weight, then you definitely got to have a conversation about this.
I think a lot of what we're talking about are things that happen after the fact, after you already got kids, after two stupid people got together, and now you're trying to figure it. These stupid people, and now you're trying to figure it out. So as you're trying to figure it out, it's like, okay, I'm doing my part. And now you're trying to say what their part is, because you feel like, hey, I'm doing all of this. What you doing over there? Just as you said. But that's why people have to step back and say, okay, let's have a conversation. Kids sleep. Let's talk about this and talk about it. They may even need help talking about it, because sometimes people will get in their feelings when you go against how they're moving, because that's what they're used to doing. They don't see anything wrong. So now, if they may need a mediator, they may need a coach, they may need counseling or something other than just them trying to figure it out. Because that's what happened with a lot of us. We jumped in relationships and we tried to figure it out.
And I think I'm gonna add something. I'm gonna cut some people a little bit of slack. I'm gonna give some people a little bit of grace. And I think that
just so you know, I'm
well, here's what I mean is that most people, even if you have the conversations before the marriage, there's a lot more things that just going to come up that you don't know that you don't know that you're supposed to have a conversation about. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have a conversation about, hey, what do we do when we have 3 children and they all 3 have events going on at the same time? How do we work it? You know what I mean? Like, we didn't have that conversation. We didn't know that stuff was going to come up. You know what I'm saying? So it just, all I'm saying is that you can have a whole bunch of conversations before you get married and while you're dating and, the courting phase, but there are still going to be some things that are going to come up during the marriage that you may have overlooked or that may not have come up. When you don't have kids and then you do have kids, it's like just new things are going to come up. That was just my only point.
So the question I feel is that needs to be addressed is how do you know the other party is not doing their best? Is because and here's why I say that is because when we're talking about parenting, I may be more focused on, buckling down on this. And you may not really care about that. I can't make you care about this thing. That's something that I don't want my kids to do, or I want the kids to do. It's not that important to you. Like, And so it's a real thing. Like this, there's some parents that are like, my kids will be honor roll and be able to fight for valedictorian when they graduate high school. And some parents is like, hey, graduate, just do what you love when you grow up. Like, you know what I mean? So I may not be trying my best at the thing you want me to try harder at because I don't care about that thing as much as you do. I care more about the respect and character thing than I do about the valedictorian. And I'm not saying, education is not important or character is not important, but the other parent just might not be that invested into what you're into that specific area. So I think sometimes we say, oh, this person don't care about this person don't care about that because they don't care about what we want them to care about.
So the reason why I said what I said, because this is a loaded question. I want to make sure I'm saying this. This question, and this isn't directed at you, Ms. McCoy. I want to make sure I'm saying that. But this question I've heard so many different times, asked so many different ways. It leaves a lot to be desired for understanding. So to flatly answer this question does not take in any specificities of anybody's situation. Okay. So how do you as a father feel about one parent is doing their best? Nobody does their best. They do what they're doing at their current point in time. But what I've found to be very consistent is if you talk to them at a later point in time, they will openly and honestly tell you that if they could turn back the hands of time, they would do things differently, which is evidence that they didn't do their best. They did what they knew how to do. That doesn't mean they're best. It's two totally different things. Another thing to pay into to factor in, the other parent could care less. Now, was that parent in the home or out the home? Unknown because of the style of question. I'm not asking for specificity. I'm just talking about the question in general. Unknown when it comes down to this. So going back to Gaddy's point, I agree that person may have been doing what they knew how to do, which according to their previous, concept, that could have been their best. But maybe you're just better at the thing that you expected them to do. And because you were better at the thing that you expected them to do than what they were doing was substandard. But to them, it was their best or just what they knew how to do. But again, this also goes back to the model, right? See, we try to have this notion of moving into this new space of life as though we all came from perfect homes. I need to be consciously aware if I am looking at intertwining myself with a person who did not have their mother or did not have their father. That's part of my decision making understanding right there. That's part of my decision making metrics. Okay. Now let's look at it from a different perspective. What if we're talking about a father who was like we talked about, I think it was last night on TikTok, who is an absentee father, which simply means that they're not in a home. Well, parenting by proximity does not make that person a better parent over the one who's not in the home. And oh yeah, by the way, if they're court ordered to do a particular thing, and then that later on they're mandated by that parent, say, "Oh, I need this, I need that. Little Jimmy need this, little Tommy need that, little Tamika need this," and that person like, "Yo, I'm already doing this, that, and the third." Oh, in your mind now you're thinking that that person isn't doing their best, but you have no idea what's going on in that person's house. You have no idea what else they're responsible for. You don't even know if that person is eating ramen noodles 7 days a week. So I think, and again, that's why I say this isn't at you, Ms. McCoy, particularly, but I've seen this question so many different times, and there's so many unseens. And when we just flatly answer this question, it doesn't take in the nuances that go along with this question. So I hope that I was clear in my response. But I do believe that as it pertains to it, both parents have a responsibility to the child, not a responsibility to fighting one another. And I think when it comes down to it, that's what you see a lot of in the parenting space. We fight each other as parents because, again, that goes back to, and I hate to say it this way, that goes back to my ego. I want to be viewed as the better parent over this person, whatever the case may be. I want to be in the child's, good graces as it pertains to a particular thing. But at the end of the day, here's the reality of the truth. If you failed as a parent and I am the other parent, we failed as a parent. That's the answer. Will always be the answer. There is no separation when it comes down to parenting because the child came from both parents. If one parent is not doing their job, if I'm the custodial parent, I have a responsibility to do more, not for the child, right? For me doing, I have a responsibility to reach out to the other parent and say, hey, can we do more collaboration when it pertains to this child? And I think for me, and I think this is a spot for me. I don't see a lot of that. That's my concern. I don't see a lot of that because egos are still in the middle of parenting. And as long as egos are still in the middle of parenting, sure, you get the good parent award from the child at this moment in time. But what happens when that child get older and that child starts to thinking about some of these things? And now that child wants to ask a parent a question. So they go to the absentee parent and ask that parent a question. And then they start revealing some things that we did not know growing up as children. That's why I'm very skeptical with this question because it paints something that may not necessarily be there. Got it. Look like you was about to. Nope. Okay. Good. You know what? Let's just bring up the next question. We're doing that tonight. This is where we at. So, what are some questions? Exactly. I told you I trash a whole show for questions, man. But that was a good question. I appreciate that. What are some questions? What questions should two people have before marriage and start having kids? Before they get married, before they start having kids, what are some of the questions that they should ask one another? Please.
I'm going to start off with the first one. Is how are we going to manage our finances? Right there. Because if we own two separate sheets of music, it's going to be hard. How much money we make is an important conversation. How much debt we have is an important conversation. Can we manage the household on one income while the wife is pregnant? Can we manage the household on finances if something terribly goes wrong and we have to support the child medically or something happens to you? Having these conversations as kids, I'm not saying that they're all expensive. A lot of people will say that, but I will say that, man, the time that goes into raising children is vast. So, and things cost money, everything. So I'm just going to start with just that one because we're looking at the time.
I think that one question I would probably, and this is me now, I'm old, but if I had this mind then, one question that I would ask, are we going into a marriage or a partnership? Because to me, there's a difference. So I would ask that question because I can get a new partner. If you ain't doing right, I get a new one. I fire you, I get another one. But then if I'm considering it a marriage and it's by the book, not me standing in front of a bunch of people and saying I did this before, yada, yada, yada. But me saying this is a marriage, we have become one. Now, if I'm saying I'm doing that and you're saying you're doing that, now when it gets rough, I ain't getting another partner. I'm not getting another you. I'm stuck with you and we got to work this thing out. So that's what I would ask.
First shout out to my nephew. Man, I tell people all the time, ask all the questions that concern you. But I do love the idea of seeking out, seeking out questions as well. Because you got to talk about finances, you got to talk about upbringing, you got to talk about kids and the ideology of raising kids. You got to talk about all these things. Um, what do you think a wife is? What do you think a husband is? Because I need to know from you, what do you expect from me as a husband? Is that realistic of me? You know, and we need to have that conversation. And I need to know what you expect of yourself as a wife, and does that meet my expectations or not? But we need to have these conversations. So, but And the best way to have these conversations sometimes is not to be scripted, it's just to have the conversation. Let's start asking these questions. So I think just having questions and having conversations, so these are definitely some great start points.
I think for me, real simple. What is your most profound relationship and why? That's my question, because I'm listening to see what that answer looks like. If you tell me that relationship is between you and the Most High, then okay, I get it. To me, that makes sense. If you tell me that relationship is between you and your father, right? Okay, I get it. To me, that makes sense. Um, but you start talking about aunties and uncles and all kind of stuff like that. Yeah, I hear that. So I want to know relationships, because at the end of the day, that's what I'm seeking to be in. I'm seeking to be in relationships with you. Now, that's not taken away from any question that these brothers asked, because I definitely love that question right there. We need to start talking money matters afterwards, shortly after that. I need to understand relationships, and I need to understand money matters, because that's how we're going to live. But with those two things, those things to me make sense. Great question though. And so glad that you're asking that question, young man. Look, shout out to all the young men that's out there listening to us, because we hope that these questions are adding these questions that are being answered and the way we answer them. I hope it's adding value to your life. I do want to touch one more question before we call it a night, and I want to talk about the role of mentorship and community support under reframing fatherhood. There you go. What role can mentorship and community support play in empowering Black fathers to redefine their roles and break free from societal expectations?
I think it can play a great role. I had, like in the fifth grade, fourth and fifth grade, I had Mr. Chambers. He was a positive, influential Black role model for me. I didn't know what he did when he went home. I just knew how he moved in the community and how he treated me and anybody that I seen around him. So I think when you have those positive role models, it lets you see that there's a difference in what you normally see if it's different than that. And something positive can come from that. So I think the that whole mentorship, we it's a necessity in our communities. Whether you in the suburbs or the in the city, there should be a form of mentorship. We should all strive to mentor youth, whether it be male, female, because the females have to know what a husband looks like. The young men have to know what a husband should look like. So when you are teaching that and the if the thing looks the same, then I think it works to make a better overall product of children.
Um, I think the reality of it is that everybody is not going to necessarily be a mentor, and everybody is not going to be involved in the community. At least that's what I've been seeing in my 48 years of life. However, if it's not a mentorship, I think a level or a step right up under that would be being an example, being the right example, being a positive example. So even if at 48 years old, I don't have anybody that really wants to be up under me, to be up under my mentor, my mentorship, then at least I can be an example. At least when I'm out in Walmart or I'm at you know Old Country Buffet, I remember that place, or Western Sizzling. If I'm out in public, that at least I'm presenting myself as to as a father. You know what I mean? Am I present at the football games? I may not be a mentor. My son's playing football, and there's a bunch of coaches and mentors and people out there that he looks up to on the football field. But what I can do is I can be present. I can be at the game. I can cheer. I can take pictures, different things like that. So, like I said, everybody is not going to get to be a mentor. So I just wanted to bring it to, in my opinion, back one level, and everybody can be an example.
For me, getting back to the community concept, of existence as a people is key, because a mentor is really, and I'm being honest, right? A mentor really becomes meaningless to a non-community society when we don't really care for each other, hang on each other, stuff like that. Like, and I'm looking, and I'm saying this because I'm looking at the young generation and how they respond to advice from anybody older than. And for the most part, the ones I see and the ones I talk to, and I'm looking even in the ones I see at work every day on a daily basis, they 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 disdain the idea of an elder teaching them. You know, they'll tell an E4 tell a Psalm first class that they have already figured out the blueprint to make sergeant and eventually Psalm first class. And it's like, ain't this Psalm first class there? Ain't you on trying to get there? So having, the reject, I think that comes from the idea, or not from the idea, but from the lack of community. And so I think when we get back to community, then mentorship starts playing a part. Then I think also, as well as community, not only mentorship plays a part, but watching how we raise our kids. And that's one thing I noticed, when the parents my mother were really close with, when they got really close together and they clicked as a group, they raised their kids certain ways. I mean, I agreed with everything they did, but that's the thing about community. It's not that I care about what other people do. It's not that I care about the expectation, but we are helping each other. We are sharpening each other, as well as having mentors. So for me, it all starts at community with this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go there as well. I love the community concept, the community support. Mentorship looks different. I think that's one of the things we need to understand. Mentorship can simply be, I think Stephen Kyle said it, good to see you, brother, and welcome to the show as always. Mentorship can simply be, an individual that a child see at school, whether it's a principal, whether it's a teacher. It can be somebody in the neighborhood that's always helping out as much as they possibly can after they get off work. Mentorship takes on different shapes and formats. You heard us talk about previously that a lot of men didn't have role models growing up. They have fathers, but their fathers could have been absentee, whatever that looks like. So that means other men in their life had to be like role models, things of that nature. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing wrong with having an uncle. I don't know if you guys remember, I talked about the uncle brigade for me. Like, I had uncles that played significant roles in my life, and it had not been for them, there's a lot of things that I would not have known. So the community concept that leads to mentorship, I think, is ideal. As they get older, they look for more specific styles of mentorship that helps them with the concept of growth and development. So I really do love this question. I love the way you guys responded, and thank you so much for that. That said, that brings us to our bittersweet moment. We appreciate you guys being with us, but that takes us to our final thoughts.
Man, this is a great part too. I would close out saying we have championed through so much in this diaspora, right? And we have overcome so much. For us to get to a place to where we minimize one parent over the other, or to where we give up because the struggle got hard doing it. So my thing for us is that we gotta get back to sticking together, right? Men and women, community, mothers and daughters and fathers and sons. We have to get back to loving each other, trusting each other, and let's keep pushing forward. There's so much more for us to come. Uh, y'all got great things in store. That's all I got.
Men, because this is about fatherhood. men have work-life balance issues, social, societal pressures and issues, loneliness, mental health, all these things weighing on them. And we can't overlook our mental health and just look the part. We have to actually become the part. And as we learn more and do better, that's where we can see ourselves grow. But it's a process, and this process is not an easy one. So we can't just look at it and say, okay, well, I'm going to do this and everything's going to be perfect. No, because tomorrow something else will happen. And they always told it, we want to be in charge. And they said, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And men don't really look to shift the blame and find, well, it's her fault, it's their fault. No, we take what is and we accept it and we find ways to make it better. Because when we find ways to make it better, it's better overall for the family nucleus, not just for me, not just so I can have less pressure on me. Because if we are leading our families and our communities, that means that a lot of that blame for everything will fall on us. So I'm not looking to shift it to anybody else. I'm looking to make my community, my family, and my household better.
For the last 2 weeks, we have been talking about the unspoken struggle of fatherhood. Um, I think one thing that people really don't understand sometimes, if you haven't been a father, is sometimes how hard it is. I- I've raised 3 sons. My youngest is 19 and my oldest is 29. And all the emotions that you can have, you go through as a father. The reality of it is, because we don't know what we don't know, we don't always go and have a conversation with someone while we're going through the struggle for whatever reason. And this can be very challenging and it can sometimes have long term effects. And it can sometimes cost me and fathers relationships with our children sometimes because we just don't know certain things. So the struggle for a father is very real. If you are married, you know, you always have to contend with that thought in your mind that if something happens, there's a big chance that I may not have the relationship that I want with my child or my children, because the state or the court system may end up more than likely give my child to my future ex-wife. So I think that a lot of people don't really understand what men go through, and the struggle is real. Um, and it's a lot more real and a lot more struggle during certain phases of being a father. And I just wanted to say that, any dad that's out there, please make sure that you are doing your due diligence and go out there and make sure that you spend some time, excuse me, taking care of yourself, working on your mental health and your physical health so that you can be a better father to your children.
Man, that was so good. I love that. Um, I think fatherhood is important. If we have not gotten that nugget yet, I hope that we brought it home over the past couple of weeks. It is the first introduction that a child really gets to God the Father through their father. It's a metaphoric representation. Um, and so we have to be careful when we downplay fatherhood. Now, I'm not trying to compare the human flesh to God the Father. What I'm saying is a metaphoric representation. So when we devalue anything that exists under the title of fatherhood, then ideally at the subconscious level, that really doesn't mean a whole lot to a person when they hear it. I think we need to understand something clear. The mother and the father play equal roles when it comes down to the well being of that child. It's not one being grandfathered over the other. They play equal roles when it comes down to the upbringing of that child. One is given the instructions, but they play equal roles. And I think that's important to understand. If we fail to realize that, then we will conflate how I felt about our failed relationship and superimpose that on the upbringing of that child. Never put the child in between your relationship. If the relationship didn't work, I'm sorry. But at the end of the day, what is the most important thing? The well being of that child, the upbringing of that child. Fathers, again, hear me and hear me well. Your mental health is important. I'm going to say it again. Your mental health is important. If you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. Do not take that for granted. Do not try to be Iron Man. Do not try to be Superman. I don't care what anybody calls you, right? If this is not intact, you're not well for anybody. So make sure that you do the necessary work on yourself so that you can be mentally, so that you can be psychologically and emotionally stable, so that you can teach and train that child up in the way that they should go. It's important for us to understand that we should not be at odds, mothers and fathers. Again, we are not the enemy. The father is not the enemy of the mother is not the enemy of the father. However, we have a joint entity that is our enemy that we can't even see because we're too busy attacking one another. It has to stop. It has to stop. If you cannot see the results of that, all you got to do is come up from behind the rock and pay close attention. You're seeing 3 generations later what happens when we pit each other against one another. We must come together for the well-being, for the sake of those children, for the well-being of our community, and for a better future. And that's where I'm going to end with my final thoughts there. Listen, I greatly appreciate you guys participating in this conversation. Greatly appreciate all the value that you guys added. Again, smash the like button before we get up out of here. Tomorrow morning, 10:30, we will be airing Reframing the Image of Relationships, where we're going to be talking about limits and beliefs in relationships. So you guys got to show up. All y'all got to come. I'm trying to tell you, show up and let's fill this up, because I'm telling you, that's just as important on the heels of this conversation here. It's strategically intentional, right? That's right, you get it. So that being said, listen, you guys have a fantastic rest of your evening. Get some rest. We'll see you guys bright 10:30 in the morning for Reframing the Image of Relationship. Remember, Tuesday's Coach's Corner with me and that handsome fella right there, okay? And then next Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Hearts of Men, we're going to be talking about distractions. So you don't want to miss nothing here coming up in the near future. I'm trying to tell you. So that being said, have a fantastic evening. Enjoy your evening. See you in the morning. Listen, let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else.